Hi everybody, I'm Vern Hill and today I'm joined by Lucy Allen. Now Lucy is a pelvic health specialist physio, but she's also been doing some research into CARiFiT and something called the CARiFiT project. So Lucy, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what the CARiFiT project is, what it entailed and what you were trying to find out and achieve.
Yes, well, as some of you may know, I've been doing a master's in psychology for the last couple of years. And as it is with all of these courses, you have a research project to do at the end. And I was looking for something that would combine the psychological aspect with the physical aspect of what I do as a physiotherapist. So having worked with CARiFiT over the last year or so, I was quite interested to see how baby wearing within a workout that CARiFiT does, whether that has any positive impact on a mother's mental health and well-being, but also whether there was an impact on pelvic floor recovery. So trying to combine the physical and the psychological together.
And that was one of the big things that we first reached out to you about, right? Because we always want to make sure that we're trying to give the very best education, cover and protection that we can for our ladies. And obviously when it comes to specifically baby wearing workouts and the rise of them, we like to try and be as forward thinking as we can. And so actually having a specific study to back up the things that we say and the positive things that we hear was actually something you were really keen to get stuck into.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you Google baby wearing and you look for any evidence that is of scientific quality, there isn't anything that links baby wearing and exercise together. It's all around the benefits for breastfeeding. So that, again, for me, it was great that you guys for CARiFiT were kind of up for being a part of the study and putting yourselves out there. But also it gave me a chance to actually contribute to research in an area where there is just nothing really there at the moment.
And that's really important, right? Because lots of claims are made, lots of people in all spheres of exercise, but they say, you know, this is recommended by, endorsed by, but actually they're just claims. Nobody actually really goes to the level of studying participants on any kind of scale other than anecdotal evidence. So I was really happy to open us up to it, as we've been opened up to an independent evaluation before, albeit a little bit nervous because you're exposing yourself to something outside of your control, essentially.
Yeah, and I think nobody knows when you start out a research project what the results are going to show. You know, you might come out of it shining, but there might also be things that you didn't do so well on. So it's a risk, I think, for anybody to put themselves up for it. But essentially, the benefits at the end of that for most people, you know, even if it just shows that you need to improve things, that's going to be of a benefit to your company and to your concept and for the women that you're trying to help.
Absolutely. So today what we're going to do, I'm going to run through a few questions that are going to really allow Lucy to explain better what was found in the study, how the study was conducted in terms of the measures that were used, and what the kind of findings were, what we've learned from it, and all those kind of things. So I'm just going to kick in some questions, and then unusually I'm going to be pretty quiet today. So that'll be a nice change for everybody. So Lucy, just for the really kind of sort of science-minded and research-minded people out there, what did the study involve and what were the measures that you decided to use to kind of quantify and qualify what we do, the impact we have, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera?
So with the study, we had 127 participants across 3 groups. So we had the CARiFiT live group, the CARiFiT online group, and we're also very lucky to be able to get a control group together of non-baby wearing exercise.
And to qualify that number, Lucy, when, you know, because I think I said to you the other day, oh, that sounds quite good, because when you see an advert on TV for the latest mascara, you know, it might say from L'Oreal, this billion-dollar company, 80 women were surveyed. And so that's not a bad number. Now, we started off with significantly more than that, but there was a drop-off, obviously coronavirus, and also just probably the fact that of the population that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think with a lot of scientific research, you really want to ensure that your sample size is large enough so that the statistical effects that you see can be valid. So any studies really that are less than 100 participants, you're kind of veering into that unknown ground. So we were lucky that we managed to get over that, and our sample sizes were a good enough number for what we were looking at. So the participants that we did manage to have kind of all the way through, completing everything, they filled out a questionnaire that was made up of 3 outcome measures. Now those outcome measures are all validated, and that they've been researched to make sure that they do what they say they do. And they're widely used in research that's already out there on other topics. So the first one that we used was a depression scale to be able to establish where mums are at with regards to postnatal depression. The second one was a bonding questionnaire to determine a mother's bond with her baby. And lastly was a pelvic floor questionnaire. Now the one that I chose to use, it covers bladder, bowel, prolapse symptoms and sexual dysfunction. So it's kind of an all-in-one outcome measure. Because I was very mindful that the questionnaire as a total, the whole thing took women about 20 minutes to complete. So if I'd gone and used a different type of questionnaire, they would have been there probably for half a day filling out everything. So I had to bear that in mind. But it's important that the outcome measures we use are validated. Otherwise, it doesn't really give us anything of worth. And comparing the scores that the women had at the beginning of the study, and the women ranged from 6 weeks postnatal was the earliest point they could join. And then the same questionnaire was done again 6 weeks later. Now, obviously, we had wanted to do an 8-week study, but with lockdown in the pandemic, we shut it 2 weeks early because those that were attending the live classes would have switched to the online group, and we've all got a bit murky because everyone was split and divided through self-allocation into either the live CARiFiT group, the online CARiFiT group, and the control group. So that and
the control group's really important, right? Because that's often the bit that doesn't get done, or when you're just using anecdotal evidence or a survey, there's no control
comparison.
group, so there's no flat state to measure against.
Yeah, I think if you really want to know if what you're doing is better than something else, you have to be able to compare it to something. And a control group who weren't doing a formal baby wearing workout concept, you're able to directly compare yourself as a baby wearing workout to not. So that was really important. Yeah, we're really pleased that we're able to have that.
Fantastic. So if we get into the 3 distinct things, and you can kind of run us through essentially what you found would be amazing. So now the first one, and one of the things that I was really interested in, because it's something we've always heard anecdotally, and when we had our independent evaluation done 18 months ago, it was really kind of robust within that, and obviously it was something that the Royal College of GPs were really interested in, and that is the area that you were looking at around postnatal depression. So what did you find there in terms of CARiFiT and its impact on mental health, on depression? Take it away.
So the study found that those that participated in the CARiFiT workout groups showed less signs of depressive symptoms than those in the control group. So those participating in CARiFiT saw a greater benefit on their mental health than those that did not. And in particular, we found that the online group showed a slightly greater improvement than the live group, but it was marginal. But what's great is that the difference between CARiFiT and the control, it was statistically significant, which is what we're looking for. And
that's quite a key bit of phrasing, because to be able to say something is this, as a non-science person, something is statistically significant, that's basically proof.
Yeah, it's not that one person in the CARiFiT group more than the control group was better. It's shown that the number between those who got better in the control versus those that got better in the CARiFiT groups, there was a significant difference in numbers. And so that was really, really great to see, because, you know, with postnatal mental health, you know, we know what's about 20% of the population experience it. So finding an intervention that is physical, and also involves wearing your baby, it's to show that that can help mental health, I think is huge. So it's great that CARiFiT came good with the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to hear that it's backed by research, because it's something we've heard anecdotally for so long, and you kind of suspect it, but it's great to prove it, which is amazing.
It's one thing for it to be implied, and it's another for it to be proven, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And so following on from that one, the second thing you looked at, and despite the amazing world of baby wearing in which we live, there's not massive amounts of research around this, was the bonding element. So the parent-infant bonding. So talk us through how that was kind of studied and what you found.
So again, this was measured through a postnatal bonding questionnaire. And this is really where I think CARiFiT shone more so than in the other categories, really, in that there was a real strong statistical significant difference between CARiFiT and the control group of bonding. I mean, the levels were completely different. So, you know, it's kind of undeniable that taking part in the CARiFiT baby wearing workouts will improve your bond with baby versus not.
And I'm really interested in that one, Lucy, because because you said that's such a strong outcome and such a strong impact, does that feed straight back into the mental health aspect? And do they kind of play off each other? Is that what you've come to find and kind of understand?
So from the research that's out there on maternal mental health and maternal bond with baby, what we know is that mums who suffer with postnatal depression, they tend to have lower levels of bonding with their baby. So mums that are less depressed will have a better bond with baby from the research that's out there at the moment. And interestingly as well, in this study, it was the live group had slightly greater levels of bonding than the online group. And again, when we look at the evidence behind why that might be, we know that working out and exercising in a group helps or benefits mental health more than working out alone. Working out alone still gives benefits for mental health, it's not detrimental. But being in a group environment is of a plus. So I think that's why we saw a difference in the live and the online groups with that. But across the board, both groups significantly improved bonding with baby scores versus those in the control group.
Phenomenal. And that's, again, something we've heard anecdotally, but not just from a CARiFiT point of view, but for the whole kind of take on baby wearing. And for those that might be thinking, well, what's so special about baby wearing? That's a real marker of what's one of the big benefits, and to actually have it statistically significantly proven, as opposed to anecdotally, baby wearing helps you bond with your baby, is for me is phenomenal, because it's something that parents report, but again hasn't really been studied. So you're kind of breaking new ground, particularly with that bit.
Yeah, I think the evidence that's out there that I think the baby wearing concept has partly been built on is the effect of kind of oxytocin release when babies are first born. You get that skin to skin contact. So there's a lot of studies around skin to skin contact being a benefit, and wearing your baby, you've got skin to skin, but there's more coming out now of us looking at those levels past that initial kind of first few hours of birth. And you're still getting that
trimester.
Exactly. In the fourth trimester, body to body contact, even as well as skin to skin, is still beneficial. But you also, if you're exercising and baby wearing, you've got your oxytocin release as well with the cortisol release. You know, it's kind of a 2-in-1 benefit for mother and baby, and also for dad. The evidence is also there for dads. For dad's oxytocin release, they also get a benefit through baby wearing as well. So if there are any dads that also want to take part in CARiFiT, then they should.
Phenomenal. Amazing to hear. Right, we'll do the next question. Right. Now, before we kind of move on, Lucy, to the physio elements, which I know is probably going to be the bit that most people are most interested in that follow us, but on those first two elements, so on the bonding, on the mental health and postnatal depression, was there anything that you found that you were particularly surprised by? Anything that you thought, well, we need to kind of follow this up with more, or there should be certain people that are really interested in this from a from any other kind of cross medical perspective? Was there anything that really kind of caught your eye?
I think if we're looking purely at the mental health and the bonding side, the whole idea of this project was to look to see if there was whether each of those influenced each other. So does the physical well-being influence the psychological well-being of a new mum? And that's something that really the research is starting to come out, but there isn't tons into it. So for me, one of the really interesting parts was to see that if you did have higher scores of depression, your bonding scores were lower. So that direct relationship was shown, but also those that had higher symptom levels of pelvic floor issues, they also had less bond with baby. So it was kind of bringing all three elements of those together and seeing how they interact. For me was really interesting. And I think it's something that definitely needs more research into it. It's not necessarily about you pick up someone's got some depressive symptoms and you prescribe antidepressants, or they see a psychologist or have therapy. Actually, exercise, especially baby wearing, can really make a difference in improving them all round. And it's something that I think isn't utilised enough as an intervention for women.
And so that kind of leads us nicely into the bit. And to be honest, this was the bit that when you said you wanted to include this in the study, I'll be completely honest, I was simultaneously both thrilled, petrified, and completely intrigued, because the amount of time and effort and planning that goes into the programming of CARiFiT and the way we ask people to move and the support we try and create around it with our online membership, with our free Royal College of GP scheme, with getting people like yourself involved in making sure that there's a real process to people's recovery. Of all these things, physios, all you wonderful physios out there, have always kind of questioned, and rightfully so, because that's part of their job, whether baby wearing exercise really is a great go-to. And it's been interesting watching the shift back towards the need to load the postnatal body to help it recover, because baby wearing is ultimately just loading. Sure, you can hold a kettlebell or you can put your baby on. Yeah. So I was, fascinated, petrified. So come on, let's have it. What did we find out about CARiFiT and postnatal pelvic floors? How did we do?
So the study showed that participating in CARiFiT workouts, they do not worsen pelvic floor symptoms. In fact, they helped women with pelvic floor symptoms. So from the scores at the beginning of the study, for the scores of pelvic floor reported symptoms at the beginning of the study, all the participants were actually rather symptomatic across the board. That although all groups showed some improvement, those in the CARiFiT group improved the most. So it definitely, the CARiFiT concept doesn't make pelvic floor issues worse. It can actually help and aid the rehabilitation process, which was really important, I know, for you, but also for me, to be able to see that the CARiFiT that I recommend some of my clients to, it really does what I thought it did, basically. Yeah. It's not something that's going to negatively impact a woman.
And of course, we're always highly aware with this, and one of my big things always, and one of the reasons we first got in touch was, postnatal rehab should be about collaboration. It should be about bringing together all the elements that people need to recover, in the best way possible. And of course, that's very different for every person. There's no one off the shelf solution for everybody, but there is a proper pathway that everybody has to kind of pass through. And so I guess what we try and do with the content we built with you and all of the other inputs that we have that everybody's exposed to is we try and make sure that at every opportunity they make the right choices for what they're experiencing physically, which if enough people do it, that's why you're going to have that beneficial outcome, as opposed to a detrimental one where people are just doing the wrong thing and not understanding it and haven't had the education around it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said in the beginning, it's when we think of load, yes, from a physio point of view, things have changed over the last 2 years, even in that, the evidence that's come out around pelvic floor rehab, tells us that actually you want to be making a woman's pelvic floor fit for purpose. So if they're a mother, then they are lifting weight all the time. They might be lifting both children and shopping bags and, you know, going up and down the stairs all at once. So if we're just not loading that pelvic floor, we're not doing them the right service. So CARiFiT loads the pelvic floor, you know, no one is denying that, but it's not loading them any more than they were loaded in day-to-day life. And actually the way that your workouts have been devised is that we know you're using movements that are evidence-based to naturally recruit the pelvic floor, but also all the trainers, and having done the course, I can say this, you know, they're taught about how to teach women to engage the pelvic floor correctly during movement, how to breathe. And I think that's the difference in whether you see somebody doing exercise and their pelvic floor maybe symptoms not getting better, or those maybe that worsen, is because they're actually, the prompts aren't quite right. Because everybody's pelvic floor is different. How we cope with increased abdominal pressure is different. So you can't, there's no one size fits all in any exercise concept. But I think as long as women know how to recruit their pelvic floor, how to breathe, have the right posture, have their carriers fitted correctly, then you are putting them in the best position possible to get the most out of their rehab and out of their exercise.
And that's been one of the best things about this is we can take these findings and we can say, well, look, let's beef up this module, and this module that all of our members get exposed to, because we know that it's doing a good job, but we think we can make it do a great job.
Yeah,
and that's absolutely invaluable. And that's the kind of evidence-based feedback that nobody ever exposes themselves to. So by kind of exposing ourselves to the risk of finding something we didn't want to, actually by doing pretty well, I think we can move to a place where we can do exceptionally well and work even closer with physios like yourself, other medical inputs, and create something even more educational and robust than currently exists. And that for me is, I guess that's one of the most interesting things, because you talk about the shift in physio and their approach to things, and I would talk about the shift in online exercise and how people sell stuff.
Yeah.
And how they market it. Every single person seems to be endorsed medically and endorsed by a physiotherapist. And actually, I think that that's a bit of a disservice and a bit misleading, because to have a doctor come to your class, and I've been there, I've done it, I've had doctors come to class and say something lovely, and of course you share it because it's a really educated input on what you do, but it's not the same as actual research.
It's having
and actual endorsement.
Yeah, it's the impartiality, I think, is important. So I don't do CARiFiT workouts. I'm not a mother yet, so it's not that I am attending your classes and saying I really like coming to CARiFiT. It's great, you'll
love it.
Maybe I will. Maybe I might leave my baby at home. Who knows? But it's being able to be able to say, actually, if I just look at the stats and the data here, this is what it showed. And it's shown that there is no negative impact on any part of the postnatal journey for a woman to take part in CARiFiT and be a part of that. And I think it's interesting, like what you're saying, where the postnatal fitness industry has gone over the last few years, it's just grown exponentially. And you see all the time, a physio says that we're great, and I think we just have to be careful that, for me, for the women that I treat postnatally, everyone will say, oh, can you recommend, I want to get back into fitness, can you recommend A, B, C? Now, some women really want to be able to wear their baby and exercise, and CARiFiT is where they would attend for that. Some people don't. Some people want to leave the baby at home. So all the places that I recommend patients to, I've either been and seen those classes, or I've actually done it myself. Like with CARiFiT, I did the training. I actually took part in it. It nearly killed me. But I know that what I'm suggesting for my patients is something that works. It's not that I've seen it online and thought, oh, yeah, that looks great. You mentioned pelvic floor, so it'll be fine for women. It's, it's like we call it, it's a claim culture. And it's great women have so many options now for postnatal rehab. It's wonderful, because when I first trained, it was very much, women's health physios were telling patients, if you've had a baby, you know, you can only really swim now from now on. You won't be allowed to go back to weight training or running, you know, and it's bonkers. So it's just, I think, how you know what's a good thing and what's not a good thing, that's the tricky thing. So although the study showed that CARiFiT creates all these benefits, both psychologically and physically, you know, it has shown that actually all the women were still symptomatic of pelvic floor issues. So what can we do more so in our education, in the tutorials, to make it even more known that those things are actually treatable? This is what you could do yourself. And that's really why I wanted to do it.
And that's one of the most interesting things, is that whilst CARiFiT in this study helped everybody improve, because of the time frame, you know, it was a 6-week study. Yeah. And this is I think the most fascinating thing, is that very few people were the finished article in that 6-week period. Yeah. Yes, we'd shown a statistical improvement, and that's brilliant versus the general population and other choices they might make. Yeah. But actually it really reinforces that point that I've been banging on about for 17 years and 1 year with anyone listening on Instagram, is that, you know, this is a long process, 4 to 12 months to get everything sorted out. Yeah. And back to full function, symptom free, absolutely tip top form physically. And that, you know, it's amazing that we skewed that result to show improvement, but nobody was the finished article in a 6-week block.
No, and nobody ever will be in 6 weeks.
No, but there's still programs out there that say you can achieve X, Y, and Z in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And it just reinforces that even with the very best care, attention and programming, and showing an improvement, it takes longer than that to actually get somebody back to full fitness, fully restored, fully functioning. And I think of all the things we've learned in this study, that for me, that's like the Instagram graphic. Here's proof. Anybody that says you can do this in 6 or 8 weeks, ignore them. They are flat out lying to you.
Yeah, I think anybody in any rehab setting that says, look, in 6 weeks' time, your body will be perfect. You know, it might be in 6 weeks that your symptoms have reduced. That's great, and that's possible, but that doesn't mean that your pelvic floor will be back to how it was pre-baby in 6 weeks. Nobody's muscle can do that. So I think that really fits in well with what we were saying about kind of that claim culture, is that people are claiming all over the place that in X amount of weeks we can do this and do this and do this for you. You know, but really,
this is the wrong population to be listening to that claim, because it makes you make really ill-informed choices.
Yeah, we all want a quick fix. That's the world we live in. But in terms of rehabilitation, whether it's postnatal or not, it takes time, it takes dedication, and it is hard work. So creating a way to exercise that allows mums to not need childcare, to be able to get out of the house and actually socialise is huge. And that's why the CARiFiT has had such the benefits it has.
And I think the language is interesting as well, because you see what I think on social media, quite a lot of fear language, whereas you just called it symptoms, which is great language, because it's a symptom of the fact you've had a baby. Yeah. It doesn't stop you exercising, doesn't stop you making smart choices, and it's a symptom that will improve over time with the right exercise prescription and support. Yeah. Until it's no longer a symptom of the fact you've had a baby. Yeah. But it's not a problem. You're not damaged. You're not broken. It's not something that needs fixing. It's just part of a timeline of recovery that's different for every woman, but that every woman has to go through.
Yeah, there is not a single woman that will give birth and their body will be exactly the same as it was pre-pregnancy. It's impossible. You know, just some women have less symptom than others, and that's life. But everybody needs to be given the right advice in terms of returning to exercise, and how to ensure that the pelvic floor and their core strength and everything else is functioning well long term.
Now, Lucy, obviously you know, because you're part of it, we've got this scheme with the Royal College of GPs that's incredible, and increasingly GPs are referring people to CARiFiT, and I know they're very interested in your findings, which we'll present in due course, which is amazing. What would you, knowing what you know now about CARiFiT, about our methodology, what would you say to fellow healthcare professionals, be they specific physios like yourself, perhaps rather than generalist physios, be it doctors, midwives? What would you say to those people that you've learned that is the real benefits of CARiFiT that they might be able to use in their own clinical settings?
I think, I mean, I've been quite open, I mean, and you know that the reason I got involved with CARiFiT was because I didn't agree with it necessarily. I was thinking it's too much load too soon.
You weren't expecting that, everybody, were you?
The only reason Ben and I met is because I basically called him out on overloading pelvic floors, but went to watch the classes and then do the CARiFiT training. And being a part of the CARiFiT for All program with the tutorials was a way of being able to ensure that, you know, the screening processes are as good as they are, and that you're providing women with that education. So for me, I was one of the healthcare professionals that was like, this concept, this guy, I'm not sure.
Careful, Lucy, actually, this guy, I could be anybody.
But actually now, especially, I mean, even before the project, but especially now, you know, it's the CARiFiT Babywearing workouts are a great way for women to recover after birth. So if you're a GP or a physio or anybody that has a client or a patient that is suffering mental health wise, that feels they've lost their sense of who they were since having a baby, you know, it's a great way for them to reconnect with themselves, to get out and meet other women. It improves their bond with baby. So if they are suffering with low mood, it's a way that really helps improve that side of it. But also from a physical recovery, yes, pelvic floor, it helps, it doesn't hinder. But from a general function, you know, I think physios especially, we are guilty of trying to get people stronger around their pelvis and just giving them clam exercises with a band. You must do hundreds of these and you will get stronger. Motherhood isn't just glute strength, motherhood is whole body strength. So CARiFiT provides women with the chance to load in a safe way, and get generally fit for life, and the pelvic floor fit for purpose, which is the biggest thing. So it's providing head to toe, should we say, but research.
You might say we don't just get people fit, we get them CARiFiT.
Cliche, but if you want to go with that, that's fine.
I'd imagine I'll cut that out because that's very cheesy.
Yes, but I think it's but all the evidence behind what the barriers for new mums exercising, especially when they're looking at mental health benefits, it's childcare, it's time. So being able to wear your baby and exercise, you've completely just knocked down those barriers straight away. Women, you know, you're giving them a chance and a choice to exercise. So I think that's huge.
So Lucy, in summary, I mean, it's been both brilliant hearing about everything. I know, I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit nerve-wracking when you concluded everything. On a personal note, massive thanks always for your upfront honesty and your input in how we continue to keep developing, evolving and improving the care that we can give our mums that come into contact with CARiFiT, and particularly to everybody that took part in the study, because ultimately this amazing, incredible community that we're building and have built, you know, a lot of people open themselves up to these questions, and although I've never seen the responses because it was all done externally, I can imagine the kind of questions that were being asked and the data you were trying to collect produced some pretty emotional responses and some deep thinking. So to everybody that actually took part in this study and made it possible and opened themselves up to the study, a massive thank you from me, and I'm sure also from Lucy. Yeah,
I mean, for me, I have to say, because it was confidential, I think it allowed the mums to be honest with their answers. And I was blown away actually in the beginning with just how hard a time a lot of women were having and how they were feeling about themselves. So a huge thanks, because I know some of those questions actually were quite difficult, I think, to answer. So it was a really big thanks for me, really, to all of the mums that took part, because without them, the project wouldn't have happened. So thank you.
Now, Lucy, presumably for anybody that wants to see the whole study, I know there's plans to publish this later in the year. So when will that kind of happen? And presumably you'll signpost it when it's available for everybody.
Yeah, so I'll be sending the thesis for, well, submitting it to different medical journals to see who will accept it for publication. So that will be October time. I'll be sending that through. So as soon as I know that someone's happy to publish it, then I will let you all know, and you'll be able to read the whole project then, and all the research that's kind of gone behind it in terms of baby wearing and mental health and pelvic floor. It's all in there.
Incredible. Lucy, thank you so much for all of your hard work. Thank you again to everybody that opened themselves up to it. If anybody does want to find out any more about this, contact Lucy, because it's way above my head, but it is absolutely brilliant to hear about it all. But if you really want to delve into the details of it, then yeah, later in the year, Lucy will be sharing the full paper and everybody will be able to see it. So Lucy, a massive thank you. It's been fascinating. I can't wait to set the wheels in motion on the little tweaks and improvements we're going to make together to the support we offer, because that is really, really exciting. And yeah, I'm sure we'll hear and talk about this a lot over the coming weeks and months.
I'm sure we will. And thank you for putting yourself forward for the project, because it's a brave thing to do.
Didn't give me much choice, did you? You basically dared me, and I'm Marty McFly. So
I did. I basically, you say that it does this, so let's prove it. So thank you for that, because I think it's going to be of a huge benefit to a lot of people. So
thank you, everybody. Take care.